Hello students, this is Amardeep Singh, your computer teacher, and today we are going to continue with the same chapter, Cascading Style Sheets. And in this session we'll discuss about two topics, CSS margin properties and CSS padding properties along with their values. First we'll discuss about margin properties. The margin is defined as the distance from each side to the side of the neighboring element of the document. CSS margin properties are used to specify the amount of four sides margins, top, right, bottom, left, of any object. So that means with the help of margin property we can set the margin around the four sides of an object. For example, here we are having margin. This one is the top margin, that is the distance between the top edge of the web browser window and the object. Then this one is the left margin, that is the distance between the left edge and the object. And we are having right margin, that is the distance between this object, this picture, and the neighboring neighboring element. Means this one is a paragraph, this one is a neighboring element, so that means now it's the distance between the object, this picture, and the neighboring element, that is the paragraph. This distance is known as right margin. And again in the same way, the bottom margin is the distance between this object and the neighboring element of this web page. So these are all about margin properties. Next we'll discuss about using margin property. The syntax of using margin property is margin, then we have to specify the side and the value. Side may be any one, that is top, right, bottom, or left. For example, here we are going to set the margin for paragraph tag, that is margin top 100 pixel, margin right. So these are the actual name of the property, that is margin top, margin right, margin bottom, margin left. We can assign any value to these properties by using px, or if you will also if you will not write px, then it will be also measured in pixels also. So that is all about these four properties. So let's start with an example how to use margin properties. So in this document we are having three paragraphs and subheadings with using h2 tag, and a main heading with using h1 tag, and we are going to set margin for paragraph tag. So let's start with that one. P, then we'll start with top margin. Now you can see, first of all, you can see we are having not we didn't specify any margin here. So the margin right, left, top, and bottom are the default margins as decided by the system. So we'll set top margin, margin top column. Let's suppose I'm going to set it as 100 px. Now when you will refresh, then you can see that this distance has been changed, this space from the neighboring content for this paragraph is this has subheading, and this gap is has been increased. And then next we'll use margin right. Again I'll specify 100, or you can also specify any value. Save it. Now you can see this margin has been changed. Then after that, margin bottom, again I will set it as 90 px. Now this margin will be increased. Now you can see that this margin, the bottom margin, you can also increase the we have to specify semicolon. That was the problem. Now you can see this margin has been increased. So after specifying each and every property, you have to put a semicolon after that. Otherwise that property will not work. Margin left column. I'll specify 90. Save it. Now you can see the margin for each paragraph has been changed. If you want to apply these properties on some specific paragraph only, then you can use class or ID selector. For example, I'm going to use ABC as a class selector. I want to apply this. Now you can see the result. I want to apply that selector on second paragraph only. Class equals to ABC. Now that particular style, that particular margin has been set to this second paragraph only. So that's the way how we can use a class selector. We already discussed in previous chapters also. So that's all about these four properties of margin. Then next we'll discuss margin using shorthand property. As we discussed earlier, that shorthand property means using a particular CSS property in a single line by specifying multiple values in a single line. So we are having we can also set margin all margin in single line, that is by using margin property. No need to specify any direction or any side by using this property. You only have to specify margin. If you want to use this margin property by setting all the values, then you have to specify first value as the top, then second value will be right, then bottom, then left. We can also specify the different variations of the values, like we can use 4 values, 3 values, 2 values, 1 value only by using margin property. And but when you will use these different number of values, then it will share single value with multiple properties also, with multiple sides also. For example, if you will use four values, then in here we are using margin colon 10px, 20px, 30px and 40px. 10 will be the value of top, 20 will be the value of right, 30 will be the value of bottom, and 40 will be the value of left margin. If you will specify only three values, only three parameters, then the first value will indicate to top margin, and second will be shared by left and right. So that means the 20px margin will be for left and right, and 30 will be bottom. Then next we are having two values. If you will specify only two values, you will assign only two value to margin property, then the first value, that is here 10px, it will be assigned to combine the top and bottom, and 20 will be assigned to left and right properties. Then in case if you will specify only single value, then all the sides will be assigned 10px. That means all the value will be the value for top, left, right, and bottom will be 10px. So let's start how we can use shorthand margin property. We have to specify margin colon. I'll use four values first. So first value I'll assign, that is top margin, that I'll assign 20 px space. Then we are having margin right margin value. I'll assign 50 px. Then after that I'll assign 30 px as a bottom. Then after that I'll assign 60 px as a left margin. So again we are using class selector here, and these margin value will be applicable only on the second paragraph where we are using that class, that particular class. Save it, then specify the value. Now you can see that this one is the top margin, then right margin, then bottom, and the left margin are here. Then next, if you will assign only three parameters, as we discussed earlier, that if you will assign only three parameters, then 50, this second parameter will be shared by left and right margins. So this one is 50 and right one is also 50. Top margin according to the value is 20. This one is 20 and this one is 30. Then if you will assign only two values, then the first value 20px will be shared by top and bottom, and second value will be shared by left and right. Now you can see this gap, this margin has been decreased according to the top margin. And after that, if you will assign only single value, then this value will be assigned to all the four sides. Now you can see 10px, 20px top, 20px right, 20px bottom, and 20px left margin. So that is all about how we can use a margin property as a shorthand in a single line by assigning multiple values at the same time. Next we'll discuss about padding property. Padding property is defined as the space between contents and the border of an element. CSS padding property is used to add padding space to all four sides of an element. By default, padding space is 0. So that means with the help of padding property, you can set the gap between content and the border of any element. If you will specify border around a paragraph, then you can also use this padding property to set the gap between the paragraph border and the contents of paragraph. And even you can also use this property with table also. So we are having four uh, sides of padding properties to set the gap between contents and the border, that is top, right, bottom, and left. So here we are having an example of a table. So this one is the content of this cell, and this one is the border around this uh, of the table. So if you want to set the padding property, you can change these gaps. This one is the top padding, the gap between the border of cell and the content. This one is the right padding, that is the content space between the content and the right edge of the cell. Then this one is the bottom padding, that is the content space between content and the bottom edge of the cell. Then same as the left padding. So we are having four padding properties: padding top, padding right, padding bottom, and padding left property. So let's start with an example of using padding property. As you can see that here we are having a table with two rows and two columns, and that contain the contents 1, 2, 3, and 4. And as you can see that there is not any gap between the content and the border of the cells. So we can change that border, that gap between the border and the contents of a cell by using the padding property. Here we are having the code of the table, then border is set to 1, then here we are having tr tag, then we are using only td tag to set the value. We are not having any table heading here. Then 1, 2, 3, and 4, two rows and two columns in each row. So if you want to increase the cell, I want to set the padding for a td, then I have to specify td, then I'll specify padding hyphen top. I'll specify 20 px gap between the top edge of the cell and the contents. Now you can see that gap has been changed. Then in the same way, if you want to specify left also, padding hyphen left colon, specify 30 px. So that is how we can use padding properties. You can also specify all sides, padding bottom colon, specify 40 px, then padding uh, right colon, specify 10 px. So save it, and now you can see the padding has been applied to all the sides, top, left, bottom, and right. So that is all about how we can use padding properties in HTML. So that is all about the current session. If you people are having any kind of doubt related to these topics, then feel